Good evening. Welcome back to the Dusty Feet. Today is July 28th, 2026, and we're continuing our walk through the scroll of First Kings in our Outside the Class series. So before we begin, be sure to watch the original Bible Project video, right? The link to that will be in the description and at thedustyfeet.com. It provides the larger overview context, right? The video, well, it gives us an airplane view. But here, we slow down. We notice the details. We ask questions. And then we try to view the story from where its people stood. Our hope with the Dusty Feet is to foster discussion and to help build and support communities. If you're not already connected to a community or just want to share and interact, this community has 4 primary ways to interact. 1. DustyFeet.com. That's our primary place for everything. You are always free to comment. 2. Substack. Link is in the description below. Designed around the written and spoken text, it's a place to connect to ourselves and others. 3. Facebook at Dusty Feet Journey. These videos and other videos are also available for comment and discussion. And as always, 4. You're welcome to send an email to Bob at TheDustyFeet.com. These places, they will be moderated and guidelines will be set to ensure healthy, safe discussion. And of course, before we jump back in, quick reminder, right? If you find these talks useful, please hit subscribe. But if you know someone who might enjoy walking this the way we're looking at Scripture for ourselves, like this, feel free to share this episode with them. Because along this road, we're going to ask many questions. Questions about the text, its setting, its people, their choices. And we're also going to look at the ways God was at work around them. Sometimes we find an answer. Sometimes we find a better question. But either way, well, we keep walking. So before we open 1 Kings 17, I want to invite you to try something with me. When we read the Bible, we often read from the ending back toward the beginning, right? People start us in the middle of the book and then they say, go from there. So we already know who wins. We know who fails. We know who becomes famous. We know whose name will still be remembered thousands of years later. But the people in the stories, they knew none of that. They did not know that they were living inside a chapter that would one day, well, it will be literally read all over the world. They are just simply trying to live. They're trying to listen. They're trying just to take that next step. Oddly enough, it's the same as we are. So, today, let's try to read the story from where they stood, not from where we stand. Because I think that small change can maybe help us see people or appreciate people that we may have missed before. So when we hear the name Elijah, most of us picture Mount Carmel, right? We think of the fire falling from heaven. We think of the prophets of Baal. We see a bold man standing before a nation. But that's not where Elijah's story begins. In chapter 17, Elijah does not know that Mount Carmel is ahead. He's never seen fire fall from heaven. He does not know that he will become one of Israel's best known prophets. He doesn't know how often his name will be spoken in the years to come. He only knows the next thing that God has asked him to do. We often meet people in the Bible after their stories have become clear, but God met them, well, before they knew where that road would even lead, right? So this chapter begins almost without warning. Now, Elijah the Tishbite, it's nearly all we're given. No childhood, no family story, no long account of his calling. He simply walks into the scene. And then almost at once, well, he's standing right before King Ahab. Think about that for a moment. This is a man from a small place that he now stands before the king of Israel. And then Elijah, he says, As Yahweh, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, surely there shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. Those are bold words. Those are dangerous words. Ahab and Jezebel have led Israel deep in the worship of Baal. Baal, that god that was linked to storms, rain, fertility of the land. So Elijah's not only giving Ahab a weather report, his words carry a deeper challenge. Who truly rules the rain? Baal or Yahweh, the God of Israel? Well, time and the story will a little later tell us. But the text tells us what Elijah did next, what he said. It doesn't tell us, though, how he felt. Was he calm? Was he afraid? Did his hand shake as he walked towards the king? Did he repeat God's message under his breath before entering the room? Yeah, I know I would have. But we're not told. We don't need to invent an answer. I get it. But the silence leaves room for us to remember something in this. Courage does not always mean lack of fear, because a person can still feel the weight of this moment and still obey. Remember, these prophets, they were people too. I mean, they didn't float through life untouched by risk, pain, doubt. Yeah, Elijah stood before Ahab. He spoke the word he'd been given. Just like us. But then just as quickly as he got there, he leaves. God tells him to leave. God does not tell Elijah to gather a crowd. God does not tell him to build a movement. God does not tell him to keep speaking in public. Instead, God says, go away from here. Turn eastward. Hide yourself by the brook of Cherith. Hide. It's an interesting next assignment for this prophet. God does not begin by giving him, this large public role. He sends him to a quiet place. There's no crowds by the brook. There's no applause. There's no one asking questions. There's only water, stone, birds, lots of time. I know we need to be careful not to make the text say more than it says. And the chapter does not tell us exactly why God sent Elijah there. Perhaps it was for safety. Perhaps it was for rest. Perhaps there were things Elijah needed to learn. Maybe it was all of those things. We don't know. Still, Scripture often does show us God shaping people in quiet places, right? Moses, right? He spent years in Midian before he returned to Egypt. We know David spent those long days with sheep before he ever lived in a palace. And Yeshua, he lived most of his life, 30 years, well away from the crowds before his public work began. And before Elijah stands on Mount Carmel, he sits beside a brook. So maybe hidden places aren't wasted places. Maybe they're just, part of the road. So imagine Elijah reaching Cherith. The noise of the palace is gone. The threat of Ahab's now behind him, and he hears the water. It's moving over the stones. He sees the land around him. And then he waits. God tells him that ravens will bring food. And the birds, they come in the morning. They come again in the evening. Elijah drinks from the brook. Day after day, God gives him what he needs. Not all at once, just enough for today, then enough for the next day. That care may not look grand. It's still care. And that life beside the brook, right? It must have found a rhythm, right? Wake, wait, eat, drink, listen, sleep, begin again. Elijah spent much of his life between these great moments, between his life moments. I think we do the same thing. We tend to remember the palace at Mount Carmel, but Elijah lived many more ordinary days between those events. He woke up. He became hungry. He waited. He listened for wings. He watched the water. And he trusted God through the slow parts of the day. I think sometimes when we read, we move so quickly from miracle to the next that we forget the people spend most of their lives, well, between them, between the events, between the miracles, between the stories. And that's when we reach one of the quieter lines in the chapter. It says, after a while, the brook dried up. That's all, right? No loud warning, no sign in the sky. The water simply begins to fade. Maybe Elijah saw more stones each morning. Perhaps the stream grew narrow. The sound of water became softer. And then one day, stream's gone. The brook dried up because there was no rain in the land. The word that Elijah spoke to Ahab, well, it now touches Elijah as well. The prophet is not kept outside the drought. He lives in it. He feels the effects. The land is dry. The people are thirsty. The brook that had kept Elijah alive, now it's empty. I wonder what that felt like. Again, the text doesn't say. But did Elijah worry? Did he wonder if he'd misunderstood something? Did he wait for God to speak? We don't know. We do know this. We know that God knew that the brook would dry up before he ever sent Elijah there. So the empty brook didn't mean that God lost him, right? It didn't mean that Elijah had failed. It just meant that maybe this part of the road had reached its end. And that next part, it's about to begin. Elijah couldn't see it yet. And I think with us and ourselves, most of those days, neither do we. So when the brook's gone, God speaks again. He says, arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon. Stay there. Sidon. That name should get our attention. Yes, this is the land tied to Jezebel. It's outside of Israel. It's the center of Baal worship. So if Elijah had been making his own list of safe places to go, Sidon, if it's on the list at all, would definitely be near the bottom. But this is where God sends him. And then in that, God says something even more surprising. Behold, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. A widow in a famine. Really doesn't sound like the clear choice. We might expect God to send Elijah to a rich home, a large farm, full storehouse anyways. But instead, God sends him to someone who appears to have, well, very little. Once again, Elijah is not given the whole plan. He's only given the next step. And he goes. The road from Cherith to Zarephath would not have been a short walk, right? Elijah moves through this land that's been touched by drought, right? He crosses into that dry, arid land. He crosses into a foreign land. The voices around him may sound different. Customs, they're definitely not the same. He still carries a word of Yahweh with him. And he still does not know who he is looking for. God said that a widow would provide for him. What does she look like? Where would he find her? Would she know he was coming? The text doesn't tell us. We just know that Elijah has a promise. He does not know yet what the promise will look like until he sees it. So I think sometimes obedience means walking towards something that we do not yet know how to recognize until we're there. So at last, Elijah reaches the gate at Zarephath, and then there she is. No grand welcome, no crowd, no sign over her head, just a woman gathering sticks. And then God said that a widow would provide for him. But the woman Elijah sees does not seem ready to provide, really, for anyone. She's gathering a few small branches, not enough for a large fire, only a few. Then Elijah calls out to her. He says, "Please, give me a little water in a jar that I may drink." She turns, goes to get it. I think that small act caught my attention because even during a famine, she still offers water to a stranger. Even when she has a little, hospitality is still alive inside of her. But then Elijah adds one more small request. He says, "Please, give me a piece of bread in your hand." This time she stops. And this time we finally hear her voice. "As Yahweh your God lives, I have no bread." Notice the word she uses. Yahweh your God. Right? She knows his name. How she knows it, we're not told, right? Maybe she heard stories from Israel. Maybe travelers had spoken of him. Maybe his name had reached Sidon through trade, family ties. We don't know. Text leaves that question open. We don't need to fill that in silence. It's enough to notice that she knows his name. But she calls him Elijah's God. This God is not yet her own. But then she tells Elijah why she's gathering sticks. She only has a handful of flour. She only has a little oil. And she's preparing one final meal for herself and her son. After that, she believes they will die. I think those words should slow us down because we know the next part. She doesn't know it. We know the flour will remain. We know the oil will not fail. She knows none of that. For her, this is not a story about a miracle. This is about a hard day. Her son is hungry. She is hungry. She no longer knows how to keep him safe. Before we move towards God's answer, I want to pause here. Not because pain is where the story ends, because it's not. But I think because we can rush so quickly toward the miracle that we fail to meet the person who needed it. Right? This is a mother. She is gathering sticks for what she believes will be her son's final meal. Right? She does not know she's about to become part of Elijah's story. She doesn't know that people will speak about her faith for generations. Right? She only knows that the flour is almost gone. The oil is almost gone. She's just trying to get through one more day. So we're going to stop here for now. At the gate of Zarephath, right, with a prophet who's followed God into a foreign land. And this is a mother, right, who believes she's reached the end of her food. She's reached the end of her hope. Neither of them can see what God is about to do. They do not know that they're in the Bible, right? They're simply standing face to face, and they're trying to understand the next step. So next time, we're going to return to that city gate. We're going to listen to Elijah's promise. We're going to enter that widow's home. And we're going to see that the God who provides bread is also the God who hears the cries, well, the cries of people in pain. So until then, keep wandering with dusty feet, because some of the best things we find in Scripture are not found by racing to the ending. I think they're found when we slow down and we walk beside the people that are actually living the story. Shalom, shalom.